Hey there, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of The Dark Parade. It is great to have you with us as we are concluding the series of Psycho films with Psycho 4 The Beginning, which is the end. You'll get it. Anyway, just wanted to say thanks so much for listening. Thanks for all the feedback for the Psycho series. It's been a great launch to the show. We've got another series on the heels of this. I'll talk about that more after our guest today. Speaking of our guest today, that is Gav Chuckie Steele from the podcast On Haunted Hill, which is a podcast that's been on a bit of a hiatus because one of them was having babies and whatnot, but that's all coming back. Also, director of movies like The Shadow of Death, and just a terrific guy, great conversation about this movie that, is sort of the oddball of the series, but let's not get too deep into that. Gav will be here to help us wind our way through all of that. So, without further ado, everyone, sit back, relax, and welcome to The Dark Parade. So with me, as I mentioned in the introduction, is Gav Chuckie Steele, not only one of the one half of the podcast On Haunted Hill, along with Dan Bone, who has the name of a porn star and the body to suit. And not only that, but you're a filmmaker, you direct, you edit, you do some writing, you're a man of many talents. So thanks for being here, and what am I leaving out?
Thank you. I appreciate being here, Bo. You making me blush. What you work at, missing out, I don't know. DJ, stuff out, write music and things, I don't know. I just like that stuff, really. It's not like, I don't know. I never ever like to sort of be big-headed. I do all these things, but I just do the stuff that I like, and it just,
Well,
that's it, really.
Just like we were talking about. So, before we start recording, you have a Spotify channel.
Yeah.
So let's because you were just saying that you never pimp that, and so let's do that right now.
Yeah, I write music under the name of Chuckie Steele. It's the stupidest fucking name possible. It really is. Someone said ages ago you could be called Chuckie Steele. Anyway, I write music under that name, and film make under Gav Chuckie Steele. But yeah, go on Spotify and check it out. It's random sort of stuff, some sort of synthwave stuff, but there's also some hippity hop stuff, but it's all horror related. Like, there's loads of horror movie samples and shit. So, it's from someone that likes horror movies and has just made some music. It's all right.
Yeah,
I'm awful.
That's promotion. No, you did it. That was great.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So we're talking about Psycho 4, of course, the beginning.
Yeah, so I watched all the other movies before, just to get in prep for this, and Psycho 1 is fucking fantastic. Psycho 2 is a very good, respectful movie. I'd seen that before as well. A very good, respectful movie to the original, and pretty good. And Psycho 3 was, there's a lot of nudity and stuff, and there's a bit, I don't know, it almost felt a bit sleazy almost. But this one was quite interesting because it was, I'd not seen it, and it's totally a different way. I didn't know which way they were going to go with it, but it's all told in flashbacks over a radio show. Very interesting.
It is. This was made for cable, which the original, or not original, but Psycho 2 was originally intended to be made for cable, and it was just too good. And they were like, no, we need to actually put this out in theaters.
Okay.
Largely because it was Anthony Perkins returning to the role, and there was a period there where that was not a sure thing. And so with him stepping back into the role of Norman Bates, that was the point where they decided, well, this is probably a real movie. And yeah, go ahead.
He does bring it's one of those things when you got sequels to films having repeating cast or crew, like this new trailer for Scream 5 is out, and you've got Sydney and some of the other ones, Courtney Cox and stuff. So it's kind of nice to have at least someone from the original, and I suppose Anthony Perkins is the main star of all of them. He is the Psycho. So yeah, it's good to have that, and I can see where they'd be quite excited having him come back, because the first movie's Hitchcock. It probably made a lot of money. So Universal probably like, yeah, fuck it, let's do something with this.
Yeah, Psycho it was the most successful movie of Alfred Hitchcock's career, I believe.
Well, he made it super cheap, though, didn't he? With his TV crew. So
yeah, that's right. That was kind of a quick and dirty shoot, in as much as Hitchcock ever is.
Yeah, only because Universal didn't want to actually do it. Like, no, we're not going to give you the money for this movie. What are you talking about? And it's like, well, you idiots! Do you not look at what you've got here? It's incredible.
Yeah, but that's just the beginning of the long story of studios being dumber than the creators at work. Like, Hitchcock knew, hey, I can make this on the cheap like all these other kind of sleazy movies coming out, except mine will be good. And if those make money, imagine how much money one could make if it was actually a good movie.
And it's funny because if you were to say to any person in the street, Hitchcock, name a movie, like straight away like that, they're probably gonna go Psycho every time.
Yeah, I think Psycho, maybe The Birds, fits in there, and North by Northwest, Vertigo, Rear Window, like one of those five. Yeah, and I don't know that anybody. I suppose you're gonna run into some asshole that's like Strangers on a Train, and it's like, all right, fine, you went to film school. Rope. That was Jerry's favorite, which is a fantastic movie. Don't get me wrong.
Brilliant movie. I think we're going to cover it soon. It's just like the whole one take, supposedly, type thing.
Yeah, Jerry could tell you, if you want to get somebody smart on your show to talk about Hitchcock, you go with Jerry Cortez, a.k.a. Mr. Venom, because he knows what he's talking about. I think he said there's 6 or 7 edits in the movie.
Oh, okay.
That are hidden, but he maybe so. He would know better than I.
I've seen a few of them. They're very sneaky, and it's very impressive editing for that time. Hitchcock and his crew knew what he was doing, and his wife obviously as well. They all knew what they were doing.
Yeah, and his wife was kind of instrumental with Psycho as well. So Psycho's a brilliant movie. Like you said, Psycho 2 comes along and was going to be made for cable. It really falls to Psycho 4 before finally the diminishing returns of like Psycho 3 wasn't as well received. And as you said, it's more of a slasher movie. It doesn't feel as heady as Psycho 2 by any stretch.
Yeah.
And this time, though, you get the original writer back. Joe Stefano is the writer of Psycho, coming back to write Psycho 4.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. And it is him returning. Mick Garris is directing, who directed this before he did a lot of those Stephen King adaptations.
Yeah, this might be unpopular opinion. I don't really like any movie by Mick Garris.
I don't know that that's that unpopular. I think.
Oh, okay, cool. I didn't know.
Mick Garris, I think, is a really nice guy and a dedicated horror fan.
Yeah.
And I love him as a person. I'm not crazy about him as a director.
Okay, cool. Wicked. Oh, yeah. I bet he's lovely. He's got lovely long hair, I bet he's a right little teddy bear. But, I don't really like his films. I'm not going to say upon this if I like it or not, because we do this towards, obviously, the end.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So... But he is very respected in the horror world. He's got John Landis cameo in this, or not even cameo. Really, he's got a small role as a radio producer.
Yeah, he's definitely in that community, which is great. Like, he almost feels like the Zelig or the Forrest Gump of the horror world, where Mick Garris is just popping up in all these places. Like, he's got Mick Garris has a cameo in The Howling.
Yeah, okay.
And that kind of thing, where he's been around horror movies and horror directors and horror sets forever. And he's doing all the makings of, so he must have got chummy with all the directors from doing all the makings of their films, like Goonies and loads of stuff like that. Sure. Yeah, and I'm sure, as I said, probably one of the best dinner conversations you will ever have in your life is Mick Garris.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll circle back to that. So Mick Garris is directing. Joe Stefano is writing. During the production of Psycho 4, This was about the time that Anthony Perkins discovered that he was HIV positive. He is going through treatment for that at the time of this film's production. Mick Garris kind of famously said that Anthony Perkins was difficult to work with on this set, but also the guy just found out that he'd gotten essentially a death sentence, so, maybe cut him some slack.
He went for just a routine medical assessment, just check him out, I guess, like a physical. And, found out he's HIV positive. So, he's going to be going through some shit. Absolutely.
Yeah, so, and let's jump into the story. So, like you said, this is all sort of framed by a radio show. As hosted by CCH Pounder, an actor I dearly love.
I was like, what is it? Her real name, Carol Christine Hilaria, I think it is, Pounder.
That's a great name.
Carol Pounder.
I mean, Hilaria is what you would go by. Hilaria is a terrific name.
CCH Pounder. Why go the initials? But fair enough.
Yeah, so CCH Pounder is, like I said, a big fan of hers. She is hosting the Fran Ambrose show, and with a psychiatrist named Dr. Leo Richmond, as well as a killer, and they're discussing matricide. And they're talking to the killer, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I killed my mom. That's terrible." And the the Dr. Richmond is like, oh this is one of the most horrible crimes you can commit. It has a devastating psychological effect, on the person who commits the crime. And then a special caller rings in, and wouldn't you know it, it's Norman Bates, although he's calling himself Ed, which is a little bit of a nod to Ed Gein, as I understand it.
Of course. Yeah, that makes sense. I didn't really realise that. Earlier on when we had the credits, not to break the film down totally, but it's quite nice to hear the original score from Psycho.
Yeah, it's the first time since the original Psycho that Bernard Herrmann's score is used, and outside of, Busta Rhymes' Gimme Some More, you're just not going to hear the song or the music as completely as in Psycho and Psycho 4.
No, I did. I listened to that song today, actually.
Yeah. I love that Psycho sample in it so much.
Yeah.
Give Me Some More is just a great song. Let's just be real about it. But I'm not 100% on everything that Busta Rhymes ever did, but Give Me Some More fucking rules.
Give me some more. What? Not like Halloween Resurrection. You're not 100% on that.
After seeing Halloween Kills, I'm not sure how hard I really am on the Halloween franchise as a whole.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, no one karate kicks Michael Myers in this movie, but if it had happened, it would not have been wildly out of place.
I quite like that film because it's shit.
Yeah,
that's why I don't mind it. It's weird. I've got a weird relationship with it. Anyway,
yeah, I feel like that too. Though I'm one of those people that I'll bag on a bad horror movie any day, and I've said some pretty harsh things about Halloween Kills, I'm sure. But I would rather watch a bad horror movie than a good drama most days. Yeah,
fair enough.
So. That out of the way, but so the Bernard Herrmann score is back in this. Norman is calling this radio show, and that kind of begins the series of flashbacks because he tells the host, CCH Pounder, he tells her, "Oh, I killed my mother." I mean, if we're going to talk about it, why don't you ask the real question here of why did it happen?
The producer's like, this is gold, but later on, when they kick the psychiatrist out, sort of thing, say, "No, come on, you're out of here. You're not gonna do this." And he's like, "Are you sure you want to have the blood on your hands if he goes off and kills someone?" Because CCH Pounder or Fran wants to chat with him and keep on it. The insurance company for the radio show must be shitting themselves. Don't let him go off and kill someone.
Right. But I also think that in the world in which an Art Bell Coast to Coast exists.
Okay, yeah.
That you have people call up and say all kinds of crazy things. That like, I killed somebody, I worked at Area 51, I'm part reptilian. You got to think that she is that kind. If her show for the night is let's drag a killer on the air and talk to him about his crimes, that you have crazy people listening to this, calling in saying crazy things.
Yeah, I guess I've never been sort of hearing those sort of radio shows. Even I just haven't really heard those over here in England. Ours are very much regulated. The only thing we used to have was like pirate radio stations. So before they had an official license, there used to be one called XFM. Before it had an official license, it would just play music and it'd be a pirate radio station. Essentially, because they used to be on the water, because you wouldn't be any laws on the water. I hadn't heard those shows, but I do know what you mean. So I guess this is actually just sort of fairly regular for the time these shows are around. Great listening. I can imagine it, because I was one of my notes for this was just like, how incredible would if you just fucking driving. Oh, I've got a long drive. I'll just put the radio on, but pre-podcast and stuff. Oh, what's on the radio? And then this comes on. Oh my God, you'd be driving into a hedge because it'd just be so fascinating.
You're right. And one of the funniest things I ever heard about Art Bell, and this is sort of typical of that style of talk radio, was that it wasn't that he encouraged his listeners to say crazy things. He just never put the kibosh on them. He just let them. He didn't necessarily believe it, but he believed in their right to say it, which led to one of the funniest things I've ever heard anyone on the air say, which was one night when he had an Antichrist open line. Yeah. And somebody calls up and is like, yeah, I'm the Antichrist. Here's my bona fides and so forth. And he says, well, let me stop you there, sir. I'm not saying you're not the Antichrist. I'm just saying I've gotten 3 calls tonight with people saying they are the Antichrist. And now that's good radio.
That's amazing. Just having that phone line open up is just amazing as it is.
I can't recommend enough if you've never listened to old Art Bell Coast to Coast stuff. It was really most popular in like the 90s, late 80s, early 90s, I would say. But you can find some of that stuff on the internet, and it is hilarious and captivating all at the same time. It's so good. But you're right. If you heard somebody on the radio that's like, hey, I know you've already got a killer in the studio, but that guy's shit. That's
a really weird relationship. The killer he's got in the studio, though, the victim's father's there, and he says, no, I'm letting him stay in my daughter who he killed's bedroom and sleep there. But why is that then? Oh, because she was a bitch. Like, what? That's a really weird thing going on over there. So they are, to be fair to Norman, they are a bit shit. He is going to be a lot more captivating.
Yeah. So he gets on the air and says, it all started like this. And then you kind of do a little diddle-diddle-diddle.
I know.
And you go back into the 1940s, and this is where we meet a young Norman Bates, who is played by Henry Thomas.
Yeah, the E.T. kid. That's how I first knew. I didn't know it was Henry Thomas. It's quite funny here because he's kind of in a sort of teenage years, and then it started making me think about actors that we've grown up with all their life. It's really weird that you see like a kid grow up and carry on acting and stuff, and sort of their life as they grow up. It's very strange. But he's still a sort of teenager in this. What is he, about 15, 16?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I'll get the exact number here, but yeah, somewhere in that neighborhood, you would think.
And I hadn't seen him in anything like this apart from obviously E.T. and then later on he's done stuff a lot. He's a working actor, so he's done a lot of other stuff, but I've seen him later on. It's interesting to see him there.
He's 19 is his age when this movie premiered.
But he obviously must be playing like 15, I guess.
Yeah. And, he looks young anyway. Like, you see him on Midnight Mass or Haunting of Hill House or in any of those Mike Flanagan productions that he's in. He looks
Midnight Mass, yeah, of course. Yeah, he does. He has got a youthful face. I very quickly, I really wish Norman, when he'd called in though to the radio show, had said "long-time listener, first-time caller." I really just wish he'd said that one sentence.
Right, long time, first time.
Yeah. I really wish he'd just done it. But you know, I guess it takes away the evilness of it, I suppose.
Yeah, that would be terrific. So, when we first see him, Norman is getting a little bit of action from a young woman who is desperate to fuck him.
She wants dick.
Yeah, it like he is very withdrawn and introverted and very quiet, and he's like, "Yeah, you're a very pretty girl," and she's like, "Uh-huh. How about we go up to your house?" And he's like, I guess. And she's like, "Okay, so we're going then," and just takes off for the house, even though he's like, "Look, we can't really fool around because my mother is asleep." Unbeknownst to her, mother is fucked. Yeah.
Well, what's better foreplay than the fact he has to go and unclog a toilet?
This is true. That was the moment where she slips away to the main house because somebody just leans out of one of the rooms and is like, "Hey, shitter's full."
But what is annoying with this woman is that twice he says, "Stay here," she still goes fucking wandering. And ultimately, that's to her demise later on. But yeah, she does. She just goes off, which is weird. She wants to have sex. He's like, "Stay here. We can have sex back here behind the reception room. Back there's a bed, etc." And she's horny, except that the horn goes from the interest of the house, and she just goes wandering up there. What does she plan on doing? It's just, what, you're just going to go wandering up there? Like, his mum's asleep up there. That's just kind of weird. But
yeah, I think because she is so lusty and in need of penis, that the idea is that she is just going to go up to the house, he'll follow her, and by the time he arrives after unclogging a toilet, as you said, the sexiest of foreplay, that she's going to be good to go and she'll already be in his house. And that's exactly what happens, though. She goes into the house, he chases her up there, and
no, she does. He does follow her, so her plan does work.
Yeah, and the next thing you know, she is, undressing in front of him in his bedroom, and he's like, we gotta be quiet because we don't want to wake up Mother, because that's not going to be good for anybody, trust me. And she's like, no, let's we'll be quiet. So, by the way, have you ever seen boobs before? Because here are some.
Yeah.
And this is something we talked about in really all of the movies, but that's the psychology of Norman Bates, is that as soon as he has a sexual attraction to someone, that is when Mother comes out.
Well, yes, as this movie was actually all right. I found the story quite interesting and captivating because we actually get it, kind of like when you watch Bates Motel, you get this real insight into Norma and all that stuff. And with these flashbacks, you do get a massive insight into this and how she abused him. And when she comes onto him and he gets a boner later on, and she's like, "Oh, you dirty little boy, you're staying in this cupboard," etc. So it's good that we get to know this. But yeah, you're right. So anytime I guess he gets a sexual urge, he has this thing come back to him, the fact that if he gets a boner, basically it goes back to his mum saying that that's a dirty thing, etc., etc.
Yeah. And we'll get into the reasons for that weird sexual psychology, but as soon as he has this moment where he's about to have sex with her, and then he has to kind of run off and be like, "Oh, let me go check on Mother," and she's like, "All right, well, hurry back because I'm naked in your bed and ready to go."
And she doesn't stay. She gets up and goes wandering again. Now she wanders into his mum's bedroom, and just starts creeping up onto essentially his mum, who's in bed, obviously a corpse. If it wasn't a corpse and it was actually his mum asleep, just a normal person asleep, it's a bit weird to go creeping up onto the mum's bed.
Yes.
What's the plan? And what was her plan? I don't know. She's that horny. She's going for the mum.
I was thinking of having sex with your son. What do you think of that?
It's really weird. She thinks it's Norma, but why would Norma now be lying down asleep in a different bed? But you know, it's a catalyst to get her into the room to see a dead corpse and Norman in his classic attire.
Yeah. I mean, wig and knife, and and pops up, and the next thing you know, she's getting stabbed brutally, and we see that it's Norman here, that, you know, it's Henry Thomas in drag doing this. But yeah, it's, you know, like, it's mother saying, I can't believe there's a whore in the house. Because, and that's all what, like, the notes that he's getting in Psycho 2, supposedly written by mother, are, you know, there's a slut in my house. It's always, it is always, there is a woman intruding on my territory.
Yeah, it's this movie is very insightful and interesting into domestic abuse between like a parent and a child, and it's quite sad watching this film because you really, like I say, you really get an insight into all of this. And this is the most interesting thing with Psycho, and like you've discussed on your other shows before it, just the fact that it's the psychology of Norman Bates and just how his head works and stuff, and it's very interesting. On a side note, you know, as well as it's just being a standard horror film, blah blah blah, it's very interesting to watch, especially nowadays because we're so more awake with mental health issues and everybody's actually aware of such things. It's interesting to watch it and, you know, study it ourselves as an audience.
Yeah, and that's one thing that the series as a whole, I think, does a good job of, is sort of portraying his psychology as something that isn't just, oh, he's a crazy person. There's always a reason, you know, even whether it's Psycho 2 or Psycho 3 or whatever. Even in Psycho 3, you understand the underlying psychology of his persona and mother's persona kind of battling in that film. And I, like the title suggests, this is sort of a, well, how did this all happen? And although after he kills the horned up young lady, we kind of come back to the present day where Norman gets all upset about recalling all of this and just hangs up on the radio show.
Yeah.
And this is where we get a little bit of an insight into his personal life as it stands right now, which is he is out of the institution. And the implication is that this is more of a direct sequel to the original Psycho than it is he is out of the institution yet again after the events of Psycho 3 was Joseph Stefano's idea behind it. Although I think it works well enough, I guess you could say that, oh, after he killed all those people in Psycho 3, that they gave him, you know, another chance.
Well, stranger things have happened in this world, you know.
For sure. And, you know, we talked about it on the Psycho 3 show that when Norman Bates goes into prison or the mental institution, I bet he is a model inmate. Like
Oh God, yes. He's going to fold his bed clothes exactly every day. His bed will be pristine. It'll be tidy. The cell will be. You know, of course he was. He'll be there for dinner. He'll do the exercise. He'll probably, I bet he's great. But no one probably wants to go near him because he's Psycho, you know.
Yeah. You know, that's the guy that killed his mother and her lover and also 3 women. And that was the first time. Yeah. And then he got out. and killed a whole bunch more people. But yeah, so he's got a wife at this point who is working at the local hospital, and they have a quick conversation about it's almost his birthday. There's some business about like who's going to pick up the cake and whatnot. And Norman's like, look, I'm on a radio show talking about all my I mean, isn't it bad luck to pick up a birthday cake? And she's like, all right.
And she's like, I'll pick up the cake. I'll tell you what, I can leave it here because it'd be cold downstairs. Straight away, I'm like, she's got dead bodies down there. So does she work in a hospital or a morgue or what is it?
That cake was 100% in the morgue for a period of time. Yes.
Absolutely. And I love the fact that Norman's gone and got a wife who works with dead bodies. That's brilliant work, Norman. That's good work.
At least they have something to talk about, you know?
Absolutely. They both know their way around a dead body. So, yeah.
So... Anyway, he finally hangs up with her, and then he's still in the mood to chit chat. So he calls CCH Pounder back and the Fran show, and is like, "Oh yeah, not only did I kill my mother, but let me tell you about my father, my biological father, who died when I was 6 of a bunch of bee stings, and then it was just me and my mother all by herself."
Was it Nicolas Cage in the Wicker Man remake?
Yeah. The bees. Oh god, the bees. So yeah, that's what happened. He went to Summer's Isle. Norman's father went to Summer's Isle and was stung by a bunch of bees.
Amazing.
And then it turns out that we're doing another flashback where we understand that Norman is now kind of at the age of 15 or so. He's really running the motel. Yeah,
his mum or mother really, is letting him do the work and getting him to do stuff. Basically, essentially, man around the house, and it's such a weird. It's not that weird. I was about to say it's really, really weird relationship she has with him. It isn't. That sort of an abuser is going to go and give loads of happiness and love, and all of a sudden take it back and be really, really horrible and spiteful. That's actually fairly common, I suppose, really. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, and this is where we see sort of the beginnings of this weird psychology that's the dynamic between Norman and his mother, where, as you said, he's basically the man of the house. There's a scene where they're out kind of having a sort of a picnic, and there's a weird intimacy between them that is borderline romantic.
Yeah, now this is, for Mick Garris, one thing that a genre he should work in is romantic drama, because the sequences he shoots of those two, like dancing with music and dancing in the rain and different stuff, is really good. A lot better than that stabbing sequence of the horny teenager, which was very bland stabbing sequence, but this stuff's really good. But yeah, it really does put across very easily, visually and audibly from the music, a romance blossoming, almost ancestral romance blossoming between his mother and him. But his mother flirts with him. She sort of pushes him to these bits. He if his mum was like, well, what are you doing? He wouldn't do that. She leads him, and then she's like, he gets a boner eventually. She's like, no, you're wrong. It's really sad the way she treats him, actually.
Yeah, well, as you said, she flirts flirts with him to the point that he becomes aroused, because he's a 15-year-old boy. He's got a hard on all the time. That's what as soon as puberty hits, a man becomes a walking erection for about the next 15 years.
And she's pissed off that she finds his porn mags, and she's annoyed that he's wanking away. It's like, come on, it's a 15-year-old kid.
It's not even porn, it's like lingerie catalogs, which, let's face it, it's what you don't see, am I right? And and then this is where she forces him to put on women's clothing and puts lipstick on him and so forth. And it's like, forget about that thing between your legs, and calls him Norma, calls him by her own name. And it locks him in a closet. So here is, again, when you're looking at the psychology of this character, this kid who was aroused by his mother, who's an attractive woman. It's, played by Olivia Hussey from that Zeffirelli Romeo and Juliet. Those are formative breasts for me.
I realised this is the Black Christmas lady, isn't it?
100%. Yeah.
Hello! On the phone the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, she's, this attractive woman. He is rolling around with her and in bed with her on occasion. And, and at the moment where the relationship becomes something sexual for his mother, even though she is luring him into that, as soon as it happens, it's a real honey trap where as soon as he exhibits any kind of arousal, then she humiliates him, she locks him away, she makes him wear women's clothing, basically anything she can do to humiliate and emasculate him. And so, again, if you're watching this movie and have seen the other Psycho films, you're like, oh, well, that sure adds up.
I know. You can look at Norman and go, he's probably not really a bad person, really, because actually he probably fucking been a decent gentleman, I'd have thought, wouldn't be killing women, possibly marrying women, being like a fairly all right person.
Yeah.
And the other form of abuse that she does to him, though, when he's at his dad's funeral with her, she tickles him on purpose so he laughs, and he's like 5 or 6, maybe 7, and tickles him till he laughs. And when he laughs, she slaps him and says, "Don't do that." And I thought, is this for a public appearance? And I was like, no, it's not. This is how she takes her pain out. She takes her pain out on him, and she does it later on, saying, "I shouldn't have given birth to you. You should have died." And it's horrible. It really is.
Yeah, that exact line, because that's kind of where we are in the story anyway. There's a bit where Fran and Dr. Richmond kind of sniffs out, because he used to be Norman's psychiatrist. And Richmond says, like, hey, I think this guy is Norman Bates on account of all the details I know about him.
Yeah.
And he says basically, like, hey, you need to kind of keep him on the line and keep him talking, because he could be ramping up to kill someone again.
Yeah.
But that's sort of going on in the background. But then, as he's back on the line with her, he tells that story about how his mother is complaining to him about how they're building an interstate that is going to draw business away from the motel.
Yeah.
And when he does not exhibit the proper amount of sympathy for that, the exact line is, "I should have killed you in my womb. You sure as hell try to kill me by getting out of it."
I know. That basically, she's a cunt.
It's horrifying.
She's a horrible, horrible, horrible person. That probably shouldn't have had a child, to be quite frank.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely not. And certainly not. One might assume that her husband was sort of the deluding effect, that maybe he was a decent guy and kept Norman from being, completely dominated by his mother. But after he's gone, Norma Bates is psychologically wounded herself, no doubt about that. Like, she's got problems of her own. But this is a real nature versus nurture argument, and it sure feels like nurture in this case. Although we'll get into that more in a little bit in this story, but she's a nightmare of a human being.
She is a horrible person, and like you say, it makes you look back at the other movies and go, yeah, totally understand why he does, and totally understand why he killed your mum as well.
Oh, and it just gets worse. So we're doing a little more investigation, like Fran and her crack team in the booth are trying to look up where Norman Bates is, and it turns out that the Bates Motel has been closed down for several years, and he no longer works there, and he met a nurse at the ward where he was being treated.
That's what it is. Okay.
And she helped him, get better and so forth, and then once he was deemed sane, then he married her a couple of years after that.
Pretty sure she's probably not allowed to marry the patients.
Well, he was released at that point. I think it's sort of like if you're a professor, you can't date the students, but as soon as they graduate, it's open season.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not saying it's right.
No, not at all. But yeah, you are correct. It's just funny, you know.
And so, anyway, so Norman, after they do that detective work, Norman says, "Oh yeah, well let me tell you about this other horrible thing that happened to me where my mother started dating again, and dates this guy named Chet."
Chet,
which immediately you know he's going to be terrible. There has not been a good Chet in the history of mankind.
I was thinking of Weird Science.
Oh, absolutely. The fact that he was like, how about a nice greasy fish sandwich served in a dirty ashtray? He pukes, you die. Yeah, it is that Chet, only grown up and just as much of an asshole though.
Yeah.
And so he is a big tough guy, you know, very aggro male kind of guy, and gets Norman to do some boxing with him.
It's basically he's a very good match for her because he's now pushing Norman to inciting him to punch him back by saying stuff to him which will roll him up and get him like all rowdy. So he can then basically punch Norman really hard, and it's exactly the same form as his mum does, but it's physical abuse, and it's just like, oh my god, this kid, just leave him alone. It's just they do fit each other, but then again, obviously Norman's gonna kill him as well eventually. Spoiler.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we're not far off from that murder, but yeah, no. He ends up after Chet calls him a girl and, you know, all that, and Norman, you know, lashes out. He ends up getting put on his ass. And then while they're on the phone, like, Norman gets so caught up in this memory that he reveals that his name is, in fact, Norman. And they're like, aha, we got you, Norman Bates. Which they kind of knew all along, so it's not that big a surprise. But,
yeah. I'm surprised he didn't lose his shit earlier when the psychiatrist put across the idea that his mum abused him and almost flirtatiously acted out with him. I thought he was going to lose his shit earlier to the shrink and stuff, and then possibly come out and say, and then they go, oh, you are Norman Bates. But that made me think, though, Norman Bates himself, has he gone through in his mind, thought about how his mother's actions were and what they were, and he's dismissed them because he puts his mother on such a pedestal still? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. But, you know, following that psychology, like, his father had died. This is the only relative he has. This is his mother. Yeah. And as awful and crazy as she is, you know, it kind of goes back to the first film, that scene in the parlor with Marion Crane, when he's like, you know, I had to take care of her. She's my mother, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's what I think is at work there, but also he's pretty quick at this point to say, this is also when I killed the next woman.
Yeah.
Which was an older woman named Gloria, who is all horned up for Norman also because he's a young piece of supple flesh.
Yeah, she's a little bit older than him, isn't she?
Yeah, I would say she's probably in her 30s.
Yeah, I'm going to go mid. I'm going to say 36. She's displaying a sort of milfness about her, and she's definitely liking a younger man.
Right, she's what we call a cougar.
Yeah, that's it.
And yeah, she's like, "Oh, Norman, you are a sexy piece of yummy candy." And he's like, wait right here. I'll be right back.
Again.
Yeah. And then runs off, you know, gets all mothered up and comes back and kills her. Only this time, when he kills her, this is the first time we see him using the swamp as his dumping ground.
Like in the original.
Yeah. Which I kind of like. I like that we get the origin story of, here is where Norman Bates is going to put all the bodies, and he used it up until Psycho 3, you know, like, he's not. Another theme of this series of shows is that Norman Bates, not a mastermind criminal.
No.
You know, and in fact, he is calling a radio show to tell the world he is about to kill somebody again.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is where we get the reason for that. After he, tells the story of Gloria, is that he is going to kill his wife because she dared to stop taking birth control and get pregnant.
I know, at this point, the insurance company are really shitting themselves for the radio show.
Yeah, there are a lot of phone calls going back and forth. Like, what do you think? Do we pull the plug? Do we just cut him off right now and call the police, or what do we do? I don't know. The ratings are through the roof, Jim. We gotta.
I know. Well, that's like John Landis. He's like, "Don't let this guy go. Don't let this guy go. We've got him." When he keeps calling back.
Yeah, and yeah, it's a whole thing about like, hey, recent research suggests that mental illness is transmitted through the genes. That if I have a child, he's likely going to be a monster, and so I'm going to kill my wife before she can have this devil spawn baby. And
yeah,
that is kind of the thrust of the movie, although this is all happening at the very end, really.
Yeah, we also had, though, a shot of Norman stealing his mother's body and doing his taxidermy skills on her. Wow.
Maybe the best, or in terms of just being a horror scene, probably the best horror scene of the film.
Just the fact that this 15-year-old kid or whatever is just totally calm, just sewing up his dead mother. It's like, whoa, man, that is just messed up.
Yeah. It's really screwed up. But yeah, and then we get the murder scene, which is after Chet and Norma have engaged in a marathon fuck session.
They basically want the 15-year-old son to bring up pre-sex drinks. Like, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Hey, we need you to be our bartender for the Olympic level of fucking that is about to happen here.
And it's like 2:00 in the afternoon as well.
Right.
Norman's probably just hoovering the house. Oh, for God's sake, they want drinks again,
So he puts a little strychnine in the iced tea, like you do.
Yeah.
And he delivers it onto Chet and his mother, who are also horned up. And Chet downs his pretty fast.
Yeah.
And his mother, on the other hand, is rubbing the ice cold glass all over her forehead and chest, and
you're just basically just pouring drink down her front. Like, that's going to get sticky, or is he coming back to lick it off, or what are you doing? It's that hot, you don't care. But, I wouldn't do that. I'd just be like, oh, that's a bit annoying, isn't it? Just pour my drink down myself. Yeah.
It's one of those things. If I saw my girlfriend doing it, I would be like, why are you making such a mess? Who's cleaning? Am I going to have to clean this up?
It's not sexy. It's annoying. Stop it.
Yeah. I mean, all right. In fairness, it's a little sexy, but
okay.
we've got to think ahead about 45 minutes when all of the sex is done and we're back to our senses again.
Yeah.
And what's going on with the iced tea at that point?
Yeah.
We're going to be sticking, the sheets are going to be like, we're going to have, not only do we need to change the sheets because of all the, semen and smegma and all that stuff, they're just going to be soaked with iced tea as well.
Yeah.
So we're not even going to be able to sleep on them.
It's just a big mess.
Yeah. Like, you can sleep away from the wet spot on the bed for a night and then wash the sheets in the morning. That's just, common sense. But anyway,
I'm taking it down as it's a very hot day, and after her sex, she's even hotter. So she's having a little drink and just pouring a drink down herself. But Norman is obviously waiting eagerly with his little eyes, looking, going, go on, is she going to do it? But before she can actually, well, she does have a bit of it, but before she can drink as much as Chet comes out the bathroom vomiting.
Yeah. And it's sort of this slow-moving chase scene with poison people kind of chasing Norman down the stairs and into the cellar.
Yeah.
And where ultimately Chet puts up a little bit of a fight, then he dies, and then Norman's mother dies. And now, the circle is complete. Norman has killed Norma and her lover Chet, and like you said, at this point they have the funeral, and he puts a bunch of books in the coffin instead of a body, and taxidermies her up, and now we have honest to goodness Mother.
Yes, we do. And we all know Mother.
Yeah. And so he calls Connie, his wife, and in the present day, and Norman is like, "Hey, Connie, I've got a great idea. How about you meet me at my old house? You know, the one where I killed all those people?"
Yeah, the one that they took me back to after being in the psychiatric hospital. The
Yeah,
one they keep taking me back to for some reason.
The one Robert Loggia mildly protested my return to.
I don't think it's gonna. Go on then. It's my day off. Go on, you do it.
Listen, Norman, I wish we had more people to come check on you, but you know, It's the Reagan years, so
well, we're busy. And to be honest, we expect that if we don't see you, we will forget about you anyway. So you'll be fine. You know.
Tell me this: are you planning on killing anybody? No. All right, your word's as good as gold to me.
It is incredible. But yeah, he says to his wife, meet me at my mum. She's like, what? And he says, you heard me. And she's like, oh, okay.
Well, all right. So he just hangs up on this radio show. And that's kind of the end of that story, is he just shows over, he says, and hangs up as if to indicate, hey, I'm about to run off and kill my wife. And so he heads to the Bates Motel to do just that.
Yeah.
And then Connie shows up, and he is all mothered out. Or no, he never gets mothered out in the present day. It's he's just got a knife.
It comes into will he, will he not? And it's a very good music score, which really pushes that across. Will he do it? Will he not do it? And we don't know. He doesn't know, and she doesn't know. So it's actually quite a good scene, I thought.
Yeah, it's really compelling because it's her saying, and the line that she has that I like a lot is when she says, "Look, I know you're afraid that your child is going to be a killer, but don't I count for anything? Doesn't my genetic makeup and my kindness and the fact that I love you, and you're gonna love this child too?" And he's like, "How do you know that?" And she's like, "Because I know you're not a killer anymore." And you really never were. It's just the psychology that fucked you up because of how terrible a human being Norma Bates was, led you to that and drove you to that. But you as a person, Norman Bates, are actually a very sweet, kind guy. And if you'll just let yourself be that, we're gonna be fine. And you know,
I guess she knows how to handle him because she obviously works in a hospital with such patients and worked with him.
Right. And to her credit, she essentially talks him down. And he's like, okay, I guess you're right. We'll have this baby and we'll see what happens.
But how? You couldn't do it though. She's still blind though. Okay, cool. Let's go to sleep now. Turn the lights off. No. Can you actually trust he's not going to stab you in the back? You know?
That is the big question I have here is how often do you have to talk about the ledge? Is this just like a typical Thursday for them?
I know. And or is anything, does maybe garlic make him lose it? Is there anything can you wean him off from losing it? Or how much effort does it take to do this all the time? It's just going to be such hard work. And then it's gonna be can you look after the kid? I'm popping down the shops. What, you want me to stay with the 1-year-old baby? Yeah. Can you do it, Norman? Yeah. Come on, let's go have some fun. Let's go check out some new knives down at a knife shop or something. You know, I don't know.
Yeah.
It'd be hard work.
Why don't we go to a movie? Mother can watch our child, you know.
Where's the kid? She's with Mother.
Right.
Oh, don't do that, you know.
Yeah, but so symbolically, assuming that none of that happens, which I think is a big assumption.
Yeah.
Then symbolically at this point, Norman goes through the house throwing a conveniently placed can of gasoline around and sets fire to the Bates home. And, you know, as it burns, he ends up having flashes of all the people he's killed and mother herself in the cellar on his way out. But yeah, I mean, he's basically confronting his past through his journey through the house.
Yes, and obviously it's one of those things, isn't it? Burn something down, it gets rid of it, I suppose. So I understand that. But yeah, he's seen flashbacks of Norma and Norma's husband, or no boyfriend, as he's in the fireplace, and his wife rescues him because does he pass out from the inhalation?
I think he's hurt his leg is the thing, that he fell down the stairs or whatever. But yeah, she ends up helping him out of the cellar and drags him onto the lawn as the house burns behind him, and he says, "I'm free, Connie. I'm finally free." Yeah. And you're like, well, I mean, for now.
Yeah, well, we cut to the basement as a rocking chair moving, a la Mother Ghost is moving it. And then the film finishes and we have the sound of a baby crying. Now, is this obviously them going, right, if we make some money here, we can make a part 5 and have the child now be the psycho?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
There's no question in my mind that they were just hedging their bets on this one, of we have a final moment where Norman Bates is free of, his mother and the psychology that has haunted him his entire life. He can go on and have this life with his wife now and their child. Oh, but by the way, what if it's, it's like when, is it Aliens, where you can hear the egg opening at the end?
Oh, really?
The credits,
okay.
That kind of thing. Where, or maybe that's just apocryphal and that's just how I remember it. But regardless, yes, I think it is just as you said. It's them setting up, Psycho 5, the offspring.
Yeah, it must be. It's an easy thing to do, and of course, it's a nice little touch. Have a little thing like that at the end. It's a bit obvious and a bit easy to do, but yeah, that's what they're alluding to. So fair play.
Yep, and so that is the ins and outs of the story of Psycho 4: The Beginning. And after the story, I kind of like to highlight some of the performances, good and bad, from this one. And I don't know that there's really a bad performance in this movie.
No, actually handled fairly well by Mick Garris. The performances, a lot of the people of veteran actors, really. Anyway, obviously Henry Thomas knows what he's doing since as a kid. CCH Pounder, Olivia Hussey, and then a lot of things, and obviously Anthony Perkins. But yeah, what are you thinking then? Performances? Yeah,
I mean, Anthony Perkins it's a role that he's born to play in a lot of ways, and he just knows that part inside and out, and he's fun to watch. I like CCH Pounder, always have. I think she's totally fine as this radio host.
She's solid.
Yeah. And I think Olivia Hussey is very good.
I agree.
I mean, I think she's maybe my favorite thing about the whole movie is how, Southern Gothic she is.
Yeah.
She's almost a Tennessee Williams character or something.
She's a very sexy lady as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and that I think is kind of key, that she's this beautiful older woman as this movie is filmed. I mean, she's probably in her 40s at this point, but and so she's gorgeous, but also pulls off crazy real well.
Absolutely. When she actually sort of gets angry, she pulls off she's got very good range, pulls it all off very easily. I imagine with this, really, Mick Garris probably didn't need to give a huge amount of direction. I imagine this lot knew what they were doing with the script and took that script and pulled it off the paper and brought it to themselves of their own performances. And I think it's probably fairly easy to shoot in that sense, because they're all pretty good, like you say.
Yeah, and then I think, just a shout out to Henry Thomas for having the sheer gall to play Norman Bates in the same movie that Anthony Perkins does. I think he does fine. I don't. It's just in comparison to Anthony Perkins, who, again, just so inhabits that role. He directed himself as Norman Bates. He has been Norman Bates off and on for 30 plus years at this point. How did you like the kid? I don't know his
He's the good doctor as well, isn't he? The one that did the Bates Motel series. How did you like him as Norman?
Oh, Freddie Highmore, I think is that kid's name.
I'm not sure of his name.
Yeah, I thought he was very good.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't finished all of Bates Motel in fairness. I've watched some of it because especially Kate Pollock was one of the people that was like, you really need to watch this. And I really loved how trashy it was, especially that first season. And I just had it one of those things. I just haven't had time to finish it yet. But I thought he was great as that sort of, almost like this, the Norman Bates before he's gone full on bananas, I think is the medical term.
Yeah, absolutely. You should finish that because it does actually tie up. Like I know they're going to do with Better Call Saul, they could tie up to the beginning of Breaking Bad. Bates Motel does tie up to the beginning of Psycho, as far as I remember. I'm pretty sure it does.
Yeah, and that's what I heard is that it kind of escalates, and especially that last season is very good.
Yeah, it's enjoyable. It kind of reminded me of the town very Twin Peaksy. Anyway, we're getting a bit off topic here. But yeah, I think all the performances in this movie are pretty solid. I think everyone's really good.
Yeah. So, I agree. I think this is a well-acted film. And now on to our discussion of the thematic elements of the film. And there's, the big one I think is this idea of nature versus nurture of, Norman Bates being pretty convinced that his child is going to be evil because he is evil. And has passed his foul seed along.
Yeah, it's fairly logical for him to apply this and think this is going to happen. So, yeah, I'm with him on that in some sense where he's coming from. I understand, especially as his mind is a little bit, he does look at things slightly differently than the average person, shall we say.
Yeah, and there's also these elements of a little bit of redemption with his wife, but also this general idea as he's on the phone with, I keep wanting to call her Dr. Marcia Fieldstone because that is the name of the doctor from Sleepless in Seattle.
Okay, I've not seen it.
Listen, Dr. Marcia Fieldstone. I think that through that conversation, you just get this idea of like, he is just constantly haunted by his past, that even though he has built this new life for himself, he hasn't escaped anything. He is still living, like his present is still a world in which he has killed all these people, and it's, rightly or wrongly, it is haunting him and coloring everything that he does.
He's never really going to escape it though, is he? He's gone too far. It's always going to be there.
Well, yeah, I mean, you would think that this is the logical conclusion, but we don't know, again, because we don't look past the events of this movie and go like, we need that 6 months later epilogue where he's like, you know what, it turns out I am totally fine and I don't hear mother's voice anymore and all that stuff. And that's kind of the weird thing about the end of this is when he's going to kill Connie, it's not mother killing her, it's him.
Yeah, absolutely. It'd be really interesting what you're saying then. If it's not 6 months, maybe a year later, and he's sitting there holding the baby, and a voice over him saying, "I'm all right now. There's nothing wrong with me." And then he looks up at the camera. Him holding the baby as well would be really quite scary. Ending of the film.
Well, yeah, and he gives that look like he does at the end of every other Psycho movie.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
The Bernard Herrmann score kicks in, and that dum boom 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 dun 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 dun. Yeah, I'll tell you, if you like that, you should watch Reanimator.
I know that score. Reanimator is exactly the same as the
It's like hearing like Vanilla Ice talk about how Ice Ice Baby is different from Under Pressure. It's like, no, there's one note that's different.
Yeah. To be fair, if I was going to try and replicate the Psycho score, I would get it sounding as good as the Reanimator score. It's a very good score as well.
100%, but it is just almost note for note. It is.
It's a little cheeky, but fair play.
Yeah. Oh, I don't dislike it, and I'm not criticizing.
No.
But it would be like if you did a movie and you just ripped off the John Williams Jaws score.
Yeah, because that's such a unique score of those couple of notes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be like, wait, is that oh, you just ripped off Jaws. Got it. Okay. Well, well done.
Obviously, a lot of chords and notes in the intricacy with the score for Psycho. So I guess, let's turn these notes around and change the order. But yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk about our final thoughts about this movie. My take on it is I feel like you can see that this is a made-for-television production. It doesn't feel as filmic as Psycho 2 and Psycho 3, and certainly not the original. And I'm one of those people that I'm like, I don't necessarily need a prequel. I don't need you to explain necessarily how the monster was made.
No, I found it interesting though. I did, same as like watching Bates Motel. It's nice to go back and see the roots of his psyche and how that developed. And this movie does show a lot of that. So it was interesting. And I think as an avid horror fan and a fan of Psycho, in some ways, even if you're not going to watch 2 and 3, you should probably watch 2. It's worth watching, I think.
Yeah, I don't think it would be if it weren't for Anthony Perkins and Olivia Hussey turning in really good performances.
Yeah.
And I think they kind of elevate a lot of that material. I think you and I are both in the camp that Mick Garris is maybe not the best visual director out there.
Well, he's a TV film director, really. Is that he makes a lot of TV films. I know that nowadays that doesn't mean anything, but back in the day, obviously, TV films is a certain thing, and he was assigned to do those certain things. I guess they give him the job and he delivers properly. He probably delivers under budget, and he doesn't need to have the visual scope to put it up on a massive screen for the theatre. I think he's probably the right person for this. And like you say, this comes across quite well with him not having to do that much because of, like you say, the script. They're pulling it off the script itself, and it works very well. As a TV movie, it's going to be pretty solid, really.
Yeah, but that's almost like damning with faint praise. Like, as a TV movie, it's pretty good.
I don't mean that in a bad way. I've got to say though, with all the little not flashbacks, really, sort of going back to recaps or so of his youth, all those little stories, because there's so many of them. At one point in the film, I did go, how long is this? It feels like it's quite long because there's so many little segments.
Yeah.
It's a downfall, I think, slightly.
I would agree with that as well. All right, well, let's do some ratings here. The rating scale we use here on the Dark Parade, it's 1 to 5 stars. You can use half stars. We don't do quarter stars because we're not monsters here.
No.
But so on a scale of 1 to 5, where do you think this Psycho 4 lands?
See, I'm in a kerfuffle here. 2.5 to 3. I'm going.
Okay, well, you got to pick one. All right, I'll give you mine. I'll tell you what. I'll give you mine. Mine is a 2.5.
Okay, then I'll go 2.5 as well. Then.
And the reason I'm going 2.5 is I think if you were a fan of Psycho and Psycho 2, and you never saw this one, it wouldn't change anything fundamentally about your enjoyment of those. But there are interesting ideas and there are good performances in this, but it is a TV production. It is a little long in the tooth at times, even though it's not that long, but it feels kind of bloated at times, and the direction is very flat, especially like you said, the stabbing scene at the beginning. That should be the scene that really gets the motor going in this movie.
I feel bad for the editor because the editor's trying to do their best, but it's literally like there's a shot of the knife coming down, there's a shot of it going in, there's a shot of the knife coming down, there's a shot of it going in. It's like, come on, guys, do something more,
Right? Show me a shower curtain, or
just pull the camera back a bit, or do something else, or get another angle or something. But then again, it's, to be fair, it was quite a short shoot. I think like 25 days or something. So to be fair, okay.
Yeah, but you could also do, like, you could call back to the original movie and have some of the stuffed birds on the wall, like, watching the murder, or...
Absolutely, a cutaway to that would have been lovely.
Yeah, or even Mother, Mother in the bed, so that you felt her presence in the scene, or anyway, a lot of things you could have done.
What about a close-up to the bird's eyes so you see the reflection in the eye of just him leaning over the body, stabbing away? That would have been brilliant, with some really good stabbing sound effects. That would have worked perfect.
Yeah, and that's downright Hitchcockian, seeing the reflection of action in an eye. Yeah, that's a real Hitchcock move.
I should have done it.
Yeah. The Psycho 4 remake. All right, well, now
Not as sexy.
Oh, well, let's see how it goes.
Or more sexy.
Yeah, let's turn the sexiness up in this one.
To 11.
Yeah, bring Olivia Hussey back.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's 3 little facts that you may or may not know about Psycho 4. Hopefully you don't. We like everyone to walk away from these episodes, hopefully having learned something about the movies. And this was the first feature film to be shot not entirely, but to be shot on the Universal Studios Florida set in Orlando.
Oh, of course. I was about to say, I didn't even know it was Universal Studios Florida. Of course there is. Wow. Okay. And
here's an additional fun fact about that. The house and the motel were so close to the Hard Rock Cafe there that the filmmakers had to ask the manager of the Hard Rock to turn the lights and music off while they were shooting.
Surely the Universal would have seen this and figured this out before they started shooting, but obviously not.
Right. Again, it's there's a great story about Psycho where when they were shooting the scene where the Marion Crane pulls up to the motel and it's pouring down rain and everything, and the assistant director was talking about how this was the first time he'd worked with Alfred Hitchcock, and he said, I didn't want it to be the last, so I was on every detail. I was making sure that we had tested the rain machines, all that stuff was working, we had run through the shot, everything had been nailed down to a T. And then Alfred Hitchcock walks into the set and says, you didn't prepare much, did you? And he's like, what do you mean? All this is working. He's like, there's a full moon tonight, and so it can't be raining. And so
wow.
Right. And so they had to
is that a thing then?
Yeah, and so they had to get grips to basically hold these kind of blackout panels in front of the moon. Yeah. Okay.
Well, yeah, okay. I suppose if they're filming a car coming up and you got a shot of the house and the moon's out, I bet that's going to be a fucker. And it's not something like you can just fix it in post back in those days. So yeah.
Right. Yeah. All right. So, fun fact number 2, thing you may not know about this movie: Steven Spielberg saw this movie and was so impressed he wrote a letter to Mick Garris saying how close to Psycho this was and how terrific a movie it was. And according to the rumor, Mick Garris has a framed copy of that letter on his office to this day.
I'm sure he would. I would also have one. I'm sure you would have one as well, Bo. But I'm a little bit mouth open here. I don't know what to say, really. It was Spielberg on his happy pills that day.
Right. He had just looked at a rough cut of 1941 and said, oh my God, what have I done? I thought that was crazy. Also, during that first stabbing scene that we've referenced a couple of times and unsurprisingly have made better with our fan fiction.
Yeah.
During that scene, Henry Thomas was so into the stabbing of that while he was shooting that scene, part of the knife went into his hand.
Oh,
and
really?
Yes, and caused nerve damage, and he still has a scar from that scene to this very day.
That's good to have little scars from work, though, isn't it?
Yeah. I like that because, yeah, that like every time he looks at his hand, he can be like, yeah, that's when I was Norman Bates.
Yeah, so which is quite cool. Yeah. Okay, fine. Yeah, it's a shame we didn't get to see that really in the camera in what was shot though, of him really getting into that and then stabbing himself. Because hopefully he carried on acting and just took that in his stride, as slightly method,
Yeah, and I think Henry Thomas, again, I think it's tough to step into the shoes of Anthony Perkins as Norman Bates, but I think he does a pretty admirable job of trying to be, that sort of wounded and also potentially sinister and violent character. So, good on Henry Thomas, I guess.
Does he sit there with his wife go, Psycho 4's on, check it out? I was well into that sequence when we were shooting that. You ready? Yeah, absolutely. I cut my hand stabbing it, and she's just watch the sequence going, but it doesn't look like you're into it. It's just so blandly put together, isn't it?
Yeah. She's like, hey, what if they did a reflection in the eye of a bird?
Wouldn't that have been better?
Yeah. That's what Gav said. Look, that is Psycho 4. Thank you so much for joining me on this. This has been a tremendous amount of fun.
Yes, it was. Thank you very much.
And before we go, please peddle your wares one last time.
Yeah, I do write a bit of horror-related type of music as Chuckie Steele on Spotify. Also, I do another podcast, which is a true crime podcast with my lovely girlfriend, the High Strangeness podcast. So go check that out. And obviously, I am with Mr. Dan Bone on the podcast on Haunted Hill, which we will be getting back to soon. Slight hiatus, but we are coming back, guys. We have not forgotten you all.
Excellent, man. All right, well, I'll be back in a second to close out the show. Thanks again to Gavin. Be right back. And there you have it. That is the conclusion of our series on the Psycho films, the first series here on The Dark Parade. And I want to thank again Gav Chuckie Steele, who really gave us a great conversation and a great sense. Being a filmmaker, he just brings a great perspective to the proceedings, and I appreciate it so much. He's just a terrific guy, and I hope we end up doing a little more with him soon. But for our next series, folks, we are getting into one that is sort of a personal favorite of mine, even though I haven't talked a bunch about it, which is one of the great things about doing the Dark Parade, is I get to talk about movies that I haven't really talked about before in any kind of public space, and this is all mine. I get to do it the way I want. So, coming up next, we are going to do three Night of the Demons movies, and for a special bonus, a fourth episode featuring the Night of the Demons remake. So another 4-episode series coming at you with a new slate of guests. We've got a couple of returns, but some new guests mixed in as well. So I think you're really going to enjoy it. I'm really looking forward to discussing those movies in a way that I never have before. Thank you again for listening to The Dark Parade. Please, if you would, share it around. Like I said, we're still a new show, so if you can, share it with other people that you know that enjoy horror podcasts, if you're enjoying your time with us. Be sure you're leaving ratings and reviews where you can, especially if you're a subscriber to iTunes or you have an iTunes account. Even if you don't normally listen to your podcast on iTunes, if you can jump over there and leave us a review on iTunes, that helps a ton. That really does help the profile of the show a tremendous amount. If you want to recommend some movies, I think I've got everything planned through about the end of the year, but if there are some shows that you would like to hear, or series that you would like us to do, or movies that you want me to cover, any of that stuff, you can find me on Twitter at Dark Parade Pod. Same is true of Instagram, although I tend to not be as active there, just because time is limited and you can only do so much social media stuff and blah, blah, blah. Also on Facebook, we have a Facebook group. Just search for The Dark Parade. I think you can also find it at facebook.com/groups/Dark Parade. And I'm there a fair amount. Like we have a lot of discussions, and I've been sharing Halloween decorations and all that kind of fun stuff. So you can absolutely find me there as well. And that's it for now. Thanks again for joining us for this entire series. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you did. Let me know if you didn't. Let me know what you want to hear. And until next time, in 1 week, that is it for The Dark Parade.